The call for help. The violet skies of Zephyria had never looked so dark. For 3,000 years, the crystalline towers of their civilization had pierced the heavens, catching starlight in their faceted surfaces and scattering it across the floating cities. Now those same towers trembled as the ground beneath them shook with another impact. Magistrate Seraph stood in the High Council chamber, her iridescent wings folded tightly against her back as she studied the holographic displays floating before her. The numbers were devastating. In just 6 weeks, the swarm had consumed 40% of their outer colonies. Billions of Zephyrians had already fallen to the relentless biological horror that swept through space like a plague of locusts. "The Galactic Consortium has denied our request for assistance," announced Counselor Vex, his usually melodious voice strained with exhaustion. "They claim the swarm is a natural phenomenon and that interference would violate the non-intervention protocols." Seraph's feathers rustled in frustration. The Zephyrians had been founding members of the consortium, had contributed their scientific knowledge and cultural treasures for millennia. Now, when they needed help most, their allies turned away. "What of the Draconid Empire?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "They've sealed their borders," Vex replied. "No ships in or out. They're hoping the swarm will exhaust itself on us before reaching their territory." The chamber fell silent except for the distant rumble of defense cannons firing at the approaching bioships. Every species they had contacted had given similar responses. The mechanoids cited resource allocation priorities. The crystalline collective claimed non-biological immunity, made it not their concern. Even the peaceful Verdant Alliance had retreated to their forest worlds, leaving only regrets in their wake. "There is one possibility," said Counselor Lyra, the youngest member of the High Council. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silence, it rang clear. All eyes turned to her. She activated a new hologram, displaying a small blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. "Earth," she said, "home to a species called humans. They achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago. Most consider them too primitive to matter. But, Seraph prompted, "they're the only ones who haven't explicitly refused. Because we never asked." The council exchanged glances. Humans were an enigma in galactic society. They maintained minimal diplomatic presence, engaged in limited trade, and kept their military capabilities largely secret. Some said they were simply too weak to matter. Others whispered they were hiding something. "What do we know about them?" Seraph asked. "Very little," Lyra admitted. "They're bipedal mammals, roughly similar to us in size. They've had a violent history on their homeworld, but seem to have unified recently. Their technology appears adequate." Another tremor shook the chamber. Through the transparent walls, they could see the swarm's bioships descending through the atmosphere, their writhing tentacles reaching toward the surface like hungry fingers. "Send the message," Seraph commanded. "We have nothing to lose." The communication was simple, stripped of the usual diplomatic flourishes. Just the truth, raw and desperate. "To the people of Earth, we are the Zephyrians. An entity known as the Swarm is consuming our worlds. All others have abandoned us. If you can help, please respond. This may be our final transmission." They broadcasted on every frequency in every known language, even in the simple mathematical concepts that some theorized might be universal. Then they waited. Hours passed. The swarm pressed closer. Defensive lines crumbled. Just as hope began to fade, a signal pierced through the chaos. "Zephyrian High Council, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your distress call. We are coming. Hold your position. ETA. 18 hours. The council stared at the communication panel in disbelief. No conditions, no requests for payment or political concessions, just a simple promise of aid. 18 hours. Vex exclaimed. "That's impossible. The nearest human outpost is 3 days away by the fastest known FTL drive." But Seraph was looking at something else on the display. The human admiral's face showed no uncertainty, no hesitation, just grim determination. How many ships can they possibly send? Another counselor wondered aloud. The answer came 17 hours and 43 minutes later. The sky above Zephyria's capital split open with hundreds of FTL exit signatures. Ships poured through the rifts in space, not the handful they had desperately hoped for, but an entire fleet. The vessels were smaller than the massive dreadnoughts favored by other galactic powers, but there were so many of them, moving in perfect coordination. "This is Admiral Chen to Zephyrian Defense Forces," came the transmission. "We've brought the 7th Fleet, 400 ships, 50,000 Marines, and enough firepower to give your unwelcome guests something to think about. Permission to engage." Seraph found her voice. "Admiral Chen, we are grateful beyond words, but you should know the swarm has never been defeated. They adapt to every weapon, consume every defense." "Magistrate," Chen interrupted gently, "we've read your technical data on the swarm. We've faced adaptive enemies before. Permission to engage." There was something in the human's tone, not arrogance, but confidence born from experience. Seraph made her decision. "Permission granted, Admiral. And thank you." "Thank us when it's over," Chen replied. "All human vessels, execute Operation Switchblade. Let's show these bugs why Earth is still standing." The human fleet moved like a single organism, their formation flowing and shifting in ways that defied standard military doctrine. The Zephyrians watched their tactical displays in amazement as humanity revealed why they had kept their capabilities hidden. The first human ship to engage the swarm did something unprecedented. Instead of firing energy weapons or missiles, it released a cloud of microscopic drones that swarmed over the nearest bioship like glittering dust. Within seconds, the organic vessel began to dissolve. "By the ancient stars," Vex breathed. "They're using nanotechnology offensively. That's been banned by consortium law for centuries." "I don't think humans care much for consortium law right now," Seraph observed. The battle escalated rapidly. The swarm, true to its nature, began adapting to the nanobots. But the humans were ready. They switched tactics seamlessly, employing weapons that shifted between energy and matter, frequencies that changed faster than the swarm could evolve defenses, and combat maneuvers that seemed to predict the enemy's adaptations. "They're not just fighting the swarm," Lyra realized, her scientific mind racing. "They're out-evolving it." As the human forces pressed their advantage, something extraordinary happened. The swarm, which had never shown hesitation in its relentless consumption of worlds, began to retreat. For the first time in recorded history, the unstoppable force had met an immovable object. "Admiral Chen," Seraph called out, "how is this possible? How are you doing what no other species could?" Chen's response was simple. "Magistrate, humanity spent most of its history fighting the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy, ourselves. We learned to adapt or die. The swarm evolves biologically. We evolve technologically and tactically. And we do it faster." The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The humans fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves, as if the entire species had taken the Zephyrians' plight personally. When the last swarm bioship flowed into FTL, leaving behind only dissolving organic debris, a cheer arose from both human and Zephyrian forces. "The swarm is retreating from all our worlds," reported a defense coordinator, disbelief coloring his voice. "They're actually leaving." But Seraph was watching the human admiral on the screen. Chen wasn't celebrating. Her eyes were fixed on something beyond the tactical display. "Admiral," Seraph ventured, "you've won. You've saved us." Chen finally met her gaze. "The battle, yes. But the swarm will be back. They always come back, stronger and more adapted. We've bought time, nothing more." "Then what do we do?" A small smile crossed the human's face. "We prepare, together. Humanity has a saying, no one fights alone. Welcome to the Alliance, Magistrate." The real work begins now. As the human fleet took up defensive positions around Zephyria, Seraph realized that this was more than a rescue. It was the beginning of something new. The galaxy had shown its true face when the Zephyrians called for help, but humanity had shown something else entirely. That sometimes the youngest species could teach the oldest civilizations what it truly meant to stand together. Humanity's stand. 3 days after the initial battle, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Zephyrian High Council chamber, studying holographic star charts alongside Magistrate Seraph. The room buzzed with activity as human and Zephyrian officers worked side by side, sharing data and coordinating defenses. The swarm's retreat pattern doesn't make sense, Chen mused, tracing her finger through the holographic display. They're not running to their usual staging grounds. They're moving in a spiral pattern, almost like they're surrounding us, Seraph finished, her wings rustling with concern. But that would require a level of strategic thinking we've never seen from them. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, Chen's tactical officer, stepped forward. Admiral, we finished analyzing the biomatter left from the destroyed swarm ships. You need to see this. The hologram shifted to display microscopic images of swarm tissue. Unlike normal cellular structures, these showed an intricate network of what looked like neural pathways. Each swarm entity isn't just a soldier, Rodriguez explained. They're all part of a massive distributed intelligence. Every time they attack and adapt, they're learning. And they share that knowledge instantly across their entire species. Chen's expression hardened. They're not just evolving. They're thinking, planning. She turned to Seraph. Magistrate, we need to evacuate your civilian population. This isn't over. Before Seraph could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the chamber. The tactical display exploded with new contacts, thousands of them, appearing from FTL in perfect synchronization. The swarm has returned, Vex announced unnecessarily. Their numbers. By the ancestors, there are 5 times as many as before. Chen was already moving, her training taking over. All human vessels, Code Black defensive formation. Rodriguez, get me a full tactical analysis. Magistrate, we need your planetary defense grid online now. The space around Zephyria erupted into chaos as the swarm attacked from all directions. But this time, they weren't just throwing themselves at the defenders. They moved in coordinated waves, probing for weaknesses, sacrificing units to test weapon effectiveness. They're using actual tactics, a Zephyrian officer gasped. Admiral, came a urgent voice over the comm. This is Captain Yoshida on the Hiroshima. They've adapted to our nanoavans. No effect on the new variants. Chen's mind raced. The swarm had done exactly what she feared. Analyzed their previous defeat and evolved counters to every weapon that had been used. But humanity hadn't survived its violent history by giving up when things got tough. All ships execute contingency pattern Zulu, authorized for full spectrum deployment. Seraph watched in confusion as the human ships suddenly broke formation, scattering in what seemed like chaos. Then she noticed they weren't fleeing. They were taking specific positions around the planet. "What are you doing?" she asked. Chen's response was grim, showing them why humans are considered insane by most of the galaxy. We're about to break every consortium weapons treaty simultaneously. The first human ship to engage the evolved swarm did something that made even the battle-hardened Zephyrians gasp. It fired a projectile that seemed to bend space around itself, creating a miniature black hole that consumed a dozen bioships before evaporating. Singularity weapons, Vex breathed. Those are classified as existential threats. So is extinction, Chen replied coldly. The battle escalated beyond anything the Zephyrians had witnessed. Human ships deployed weapons that turned matter into antimatter on contact, released viruses that rewrote biological code in real time, and fired beams that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each time the swarm adapted, the humans revealed another impossible weapon. But the swarm kept coming. For every bioship destroyed, Two more emerged from FTL. The distributed intelligence was learning faster now, beginning to counter even humanity's most exotic weapons. "Admiral," Rodriguez reported, his face pale, "at current attrition rates, we'll be overwhelmed in 6 hours. They're adapting faster than we can deploy new systems." Chen nodded slowly, then activated a secure channel to Earth. "This is Admiral Chen. Request immediate authorization for Protocol 7. The response came after a long pause, directly from Earth's Defense Council. "Admiral Chen, Protocol 7 has never been tested in combat. The consequences of not using it are the extinction of the Zephyrian species and potentially many others." Chen interrupted. "Requesting immediate authorization. Granted. God help us all." Chen turned to Seraph, her expression softening. "Magistrate, what I'm about to do, it's going to change everything. Your people may not look at us the same way afterward." Seraph met her gaze steadily. "Admiral, your people came when no one else would. Whatever you must do, you have our trust." Chen nodded, then opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, clear the engagement zone. Minimum safe distance, 50,000 kilometers. Prometheus, you are authorized for Protocol 7 deployment." A single human ship, smaller than most, moved forward from the fleet. As it approached the swirling mass of swarm vessels, it began to change. Its hull seemed to flow and shift, revealing not metal but something that looked almost organic. "What is that thing?" a Zephyrian officer whispered. "That," Chen said quietly, "is humanity's last resort. A fusion of our technology and biology, designed to out-evolve any adaptive enemy. We call it the Prometheus system, named after the Titan who stole fire from the gods." The Prometheus ship fired a single pod into the heart of the swarm fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the bioships nearest to it began to shudder and transform, but not in their usual adaptive way. They were being rewritten at a fundamental level. "The Prometheus system doesn't destroy," Chen explained, watching the tactical display. "It converts. It's a synthetic virus that turns biological systems into hybrid human technology. We're not killing the swarm, we're making it part of us." The effect spread like wildfire through the swarm fleet. Bioships writhed and mutated, their organic hulls developing mechanical components, their hive mind fracturing as individual consciousness emerged. Within hours, the unstoppable swarm had become something else entirely. "They're confused," reported a sensor operator. "The converted units are receiving conflicting signals. Some are trying to continue the attack, others are standing down, and some are actually fighting their unconverted brethren. The hive mind is breaking down," Rodriguez realized. "Individual thought is emerging. They can't maintain their collective intelligence with human consciousness patterns interfering." The battle turned into chaos as the swarm fought itself. Converted bioships protected Zephyria while their former siblings attacked in increasingly desperate waves. But without their unified intelligence, the unconverted swarm began to falter. 6 hours later, it was over. The remaining swarm forces fled in disarray, their collective intelligence shattered. The converted bioships hung in space, their newly awakened individual minds trying to comprehend their transformation. "What happens to them now?" Seraph asked, looking at the thousands of converted creatures. "Now we help them," Chen replied. "They're individuals now, with thoughts and choices. It won't be easy, but humanity has experience with integration. We've done it with our own enhanced humans and AIs." As the immediate threat faded, the magnitude of what had occurred began to sink in. Humanity had not only saved the Zephyrians, but had fundamentally changed the nature of their greatest enemy. "The Galactic Consortium will not approve," Vex warned. "Using biological weapons, breaking treaties. The Consortium abandoned you to die," Chen reminded him. "Maybe it's time for a new alliance, one based on mutual protection rather than bureaucratic protocols." In the weeks that followed, as human and Zephyrian scientists worked to help the converted swarm entities adapt to their new existence, Word spread throughout the galaxy. The species that everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers had done the impossible, not through superior firepower, but through adaptation, ingenuity, and a willingness to break every rule to save lives. Other species, previously too afraid to stand against the swarm, began reaching out. Small worlds that had been ignored by the great powers, civilizations that valued action over protocol, species that understood that sometimes survival required breaking the rules. "You've started something," Seraph told Chen as they watched the first converted swarm entity successfully communicate its desire for peaceful cooperation. "The galaxy will never be the same." Chen smiled, looking out at the stars. "Good. It was about time someone shook things up. Humanity learned long ago that the greatest strength isn't in weapons or technology. It's in standing together when it matters most." As the new alliance took shape, with Earth and Zephyria at its heart, a message went out across the galaxy. Not a threat or a boast, but a simple promise: no one stands alone. The swarm had been evolution's hammer, forcing adaptation or extinction. But humanity had proven to be evolution's forge, reshaping not just themselves, but their enemies into something new. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that sometimes the youngest species could teach the oldest truth, that unity, courage, and compassion could overcome any threat. The stars looked different now to the Zephyrians. Once, they had seen distant lights, beautiful but cold. Now they saw potential allies, future friends, and the promise that when the next threat emerged, and it would, they wouldn't face it alone. Humanity had answered their call, and in doing so, they had changed the very fabric of galactic civilization.